So, welcome everybody. I'm Helen Williams, parkrunner A6014, event director of Harrogate Junior Parkrun here in the UK, and alongside Vassos Alexander, co-presenter of the Free Weekly Time podcast. Before we start, I'd just like to recommend that after this conversation, people check out the many social media channels in the UK and across the world, as well as subscribing to the various parkrun podcasts out there. You'll find me on the Free Weekly Time podcast, but there's also With Me Now, Parkrun Adventurers and the 9:30 Club, to name a few others. So just as we said again, there's Kirsty and a reminder. So welcome to everybody. Pop your questions below if there are any. Somebody's just slammed a door, I heard that. For today's question and answers, I'm joined by Lucy Gossage. Give us a wave, Lucy, so people know which one you are. And the lovely Gemma Hillier-Moses. Hi, Gemma.
Hi, everyone.
Lucy is a self-described hyperactive cancer doctor and 13-time Ironman champion, whilst Gemma is an international athlete and survivor of a stage 3 Burkitt's lymphoma diagnosis in 2012 at the age of just 24. In 2016, Gemma founded the Move charity, who provide practical and online support to people living with and beyond cancer. 2 years ago, Gemma and Lucy together created 5K Your Way, an incredible initiative encouraging those living with and beyond cancer, families, friends and those working in cancer services to walk, jog, run, cheer or volunteer at their local parkrun events on the last Saturday of every month. Absolutely brilliant. Let's go to the beginning of for you, Lucy, a question for you. What inspired you to become a doctor and why oncology?
Oh gosh, why did I become a doctor? Do you know, I'm not sure that I became a doctor necessarily for the right reasons. I guess I was fairly bright at school, and you kind of, do law or medicine seemed to be what happened. But actually what inspired me was I did some wing fellowship holidays when I was about 16 or 17, which are holidays for people with disabilities, and you're effectively their carer for a week. And I did a couple of those, and I came back, and I think that was what made me realise that I love working with people. And I always say to anyone who is thinking of applying for medical school, go and do something like that, because it's all very well known that you like science, but unless you fundamentally like people enough to not mind clearing up their poo, then you'll never love being a doctor. So that's how I ended up becoming a doctor. How did I end up doing cancer? I guess I did my junior doctor years, and then I did my postgrad exams and was kind of thinking, what should I specialise in? I thought about all the patients that I'd remembered over the 3 years that I'd been working, and they'd all had cancer. So I thought, well, I'll apply for an oncology job. I hadn't done it as a junior. So I was applying for a junior doctor's job, and then a more senior job came up that I ended up getting. So I hadn't actually done it before I started oncology, but luckily, if you know the kind of people that you like working with, I love it, and people think it's depressing, and sometimes it's sad. Of course it's sad at several of the times, but it's also incredibly uplifting and life affirming. So I'm very lucky to have a job that I love.
That is why, Gemma, to you, back in 2012, you were a 20-something international athlete who got diagnosed with stage 3 Burkitt's lymphoma. What was that like?
Yeah, I think I just wanted to say, actually, before I go into that, Helen, I think from your introduction, which you absolutely nailed about us, I think I need to learn my barcode number off by heart. Because I'm really ashamed that I've come on here and I don't know my barcode number. So next time, if we ever do that again, I promise that I will know my barcode number off by heart. That is a bad thing not to know. But yeah, so I guess from my perspective, I became an international runner after I was diagnosed with cancer. So actually before, I was a national level runner who was doing pretty well on the national scene, but not international. And I think for me, when I was diagnosed, I was on the upward curve with my running. So unfortunately, what happened, I had two kind of big things that happened in my life. One of them was I broke my ankle in the March of 2012, and I thought that was the worst thing that could ever happen to me. So I actually managed to fall off a train. So do you know when they say mind the gap between the train and the platform? Well, I was at Loughborough train station, too excited after Pancake Day coming back from London, and I went straight down that gap and fell off and broke my ankle in
Oh.
2 places, had an operation, a pin through my ankle, and then 10 weeks on crutches. And for anybody who's in sport or is an athlete, that was incredibly difficult. And I thought that was the hardest period of my life. And then what happened, because I had a career at Nike at the time, so my career was going up, I was working my way and really enjoying that work. And so then that was 10 weeks at home, and then discovered a lump in my neck, and then in the July of that year, so from breaking my ankle to the July, I was diagnosed with stage 3 Burkitt's lymphoma, which is quite a rare form of cancer. Actually, it's usually found in African countries, and through a HIV virus, which I didn't have or anything to do with that. So what happened was I had lumps in my neck, 13 centimetre tumours in my abdomen and bowel, and I was pretty much a month away from not being here, because if it had spread, it spreads very quickly. So if it had spread to my my spine or my brain, I just wouldn't be here today. So I was very lucky although it was a late diagnosis, very lucky to get it diagnosed and treated pretty much within 2 days of diagnosis. So an extremely difficult time, but one that I think that the things I learned from sport and running really helped me to deal with what was in front of me, actually. And that journey was an incredibly life-changing journey, in a bad way and a good way. And I guess that's the reason why I'm sat here today talking to you guys, and I don't think I would be if I hadn't been through that. So it does lead to some incredible things, and you learn a lot about yourself and the people around you.
I mean, as an oncologist, Lucy, is that a type of lymphoma that you've come across a lot, or like Gemma says, is it really unusual?
It's actually it's a hematological cancer, so arising from cells of the blood. So they're treated by hematologists, not by oncologists.
Okay.
I
not something you would be dealing with. And as an oncologist and an Uber athlete, 13 times Ironman champion, which is amazing. You are well placed to advise on exercise and its impact on cancer. So how did 5K Your Way come about? It's when I was a registrar. So it was maybe about 3 years ago, and maybe 2.5 years ago. And I remember very clearly I was doing the job that I'm doing now as a consultant, so working with a lot of younger patients. I remember very clearly one young man that I met who I hadn't looked after him. He'd had a very rare cancer that had started in his brain. He'd had treatment. It was hopefully curative treatment. He'd finished his treatment. And during that time, he'd put on enormous amounts of weight. He wasn't doing anything, any activity. He'd lost his friends. He'd lost his job. And it just really struck me that it's all very well curing people, but we have, what kind of life did he have? And as I say, I don't know this patient. I just remember it very vividly. And I love parkrun. I always loved parkrun. And I just had this idea, why don't we, try and get a group of patients once every 3 months to build up to parkrun, and spoke to some of the nurses that I work with and said, I've had this idea, what do you think? And they were like, yeah, no one will come. So then I'd heard about Move Charity, and I reached out to Gemma and said, it just sounded amazing. I thought Move Charity was this enormous charity because she had a brilliant website. So I phoned Gemma. I always say this, but Gemma actually ignored me the first time. And finally,
I can't defend myself on here either.
And then we ended up having a coffee and just started chatting. And what Gemma had set up with Move Charity just resonated so much with me. And I said, I've got this idea, and you were like, well, I've been thinking of something very similar, and we just chatted and kind of went from there.
Similarly, sorry, Gemma, just to say, you founded the Move Charity back in 2016. What was your motivation? That's obviously, Lucy's, and you've come together and you've joined that really nicely. So in 2016, what was going on for you that made you start that?
So what happened was the idea of Move was around pretty much when I got diagnosed with cancer, or a couple of months afterwards. And the idea came from my own personal experience. And I think the experience I had, I spent a lot of time in hospital. And my consultant that I had was amazing, but you don't just get seen by one primary consultant, you also get seen by a number of different people. And I just remember, this always stuck with me, that I was in hospital for 6 weeks for the first round of treatment, so in isolation for pretty much those 6 weeks. And I remember at the end of the isolation, I had the consultants were on a ward round, and one of them, and I asked them, I said, do you think I'll be able to go for a run after this? It obviously been on, I was very sick at the time, I had a lot of toxic treatment, but it was obviously on my mind as the way I cope with things, because that's who I am, and running was a big part of my life. And he said, I don't think so. Somebody who's had the same treatment as you didn't run a year post chemotherapy. And I remember turning to my partner, Lewis, who's now my husband, and being like, a year post chemotherapy. I was like, I have to wait that long. So when you don't get the advice from one person, what do? You go and try and wiggle your way around and find the advice that you want to hear from somebody else. So I went to one of the nurses and I said, do you think I can just go for a 30-minute run? Like, I won't push it, I'll just listen to my body. And she said, just start off with a walk around the block. So when we got home, it was actually, I was pretty much 30 minutes at home, and I put my running kit on. I had no hair, everything was stripped. Like, I felt pretty different to what I'd felt like before I went into hospital. And I went for that run, and I managed 30 minutes, and it was the most incredible feeling that I've ever had. And bearing in mind, I was incredibly sick. I'd been through very toxic treatment, so my body was pretty much rock bottom. But it just gave me that positivity and that normality that I needed. But I think what it did give me as well was it gave me a sense of control when my whole life was pretty much outside of my control. I was getting treatment, I was being told what to do, where to do, when to be there, and it just gave me that control. And I'm not saying that I was able to run through treatment. Like, I had a lot of hospital stays. I tried to do bits and bobs, and you get more poorly, and there's times where you couldn't move for 2 weeks, for example. But when I could, and when I felt like I could, I tried to just move. And then what highlighted to me was that actually a lot of health professionals didn't know enough about exercise and how that felt. But I felt it myself, like, in terms of my own personal experience. And then I did the Great North Run in between treatments. So 3 cycles of chemotherapy. I went to do the Great North Run pretty much 3 days after an incredibly intense treatment cycle. And my consultant, the night I told her I was doing it, basically had to have 10 glasses of wine, because she was like, I don't know why I'm letting you do this. And actually 10 of the consultants said, I don't think it's a good idea. But she was like, you know what, I think you need to do this. And so I did the Great North Run, and I still had cancer in my body, and I still had 3 more treatments left to go. And yes, I wouldn't recommend it to everybody, but it gave me, again, the sense of control that I needed. And then what I found was how powerful exercise and movement was during that period of time for both the body and the mind. And as I went through my treatment and went into remission, I actually got back running pretty quickly. I'm not going to lie, like, pretty much I was running with my mum for the first month in January. And, I was running, for me who runs 7-minute miles for easy runs, I was running 12, 13-minute miling and finding that extremely hard. So I have been from the very beginning. But what I learned was actually coming out of treatment, or if you were living with cancer, how powerful that would be to give you that normality and control back in your life, but actually to also reduce side effects of treatment. I felt good as time went by. Like, I still had the fatigue, but things just felt like they went back to normality a lot quicker than people actually expected them to. And then what happened was, during that period of time, I started to go to some of the conferences that other young people who had cancer went to. And I learned that, people weren't getting any information about exercise and cancer, and they weren't being told, or they weren't being asked what their activity levels were. And so there was this huge area of work that was missing. And I don't know why, but I was like, maybe I could do something about that. And maybe I can, take my experience and go and help some people. Because I think initially what happened was I did want to walk away from it all. So I had a job at Nike in marketing, and, my career ladder was going like this before cancer. But having cancer completely changed my perspective. Like, it absolutely makes you realise that you do only live life once. So you don't get a chance to do it again. So if your perspective changed and you begin to be unhappy in something, I always say 3 months or more, if I'm unhappy in something, it's time to change. And so from there, I really went on the mission to try and find funding and try and do anything I can to make sure that I could take what I learned to help support other people with cancer. So that's really how and why Move started. And I guess we've evolved in terms of, we started with just children and young people. That was our focus. And then now with 5K Your Way, and the initiative. It's incredible to be able to have a support, a community that believes in the vision and the mission as much as me and Lucy do. Like, I think that, like we said, we started it without really thinking it was going to go anywhere. I think we both admit we just thought it was a support group in Nottingham, and that was fine. And now we're sat with 57 groups across the UK and Ireland and having to pinch ourselves of how we've got there.
And I think we just to add, like, you know, we've just done one of our Facebook Q&A, and we did it about kind of some of the challenges of moving forwards after a cancer diagnosis with two of our amazing ambassadors. And I'm sure Gemma agrees with me. These are a real privilege for us to be able to do these opportunities, because we find out about members of our community, and there are so many people who are just making the best of what on paper is it is a game-changing diagnosis, a life-changing diagnosis. And I just feel so privileged to have so many passionate, enthusiastic people who just prove that you can live life with and after cancer as part of our initiative and organisation.
And I think it's important that we talk about the exercise and its uses through cancer diagnosis, with cancer, afterwards. But just before that, what was the pushback like? So, you know, Gemma, you're saying that throughout your diagnosis, you knew as an athlete what your body and your mind wanted to do, and that can only really give you a positive. The feedback that you get is obviously something that you're going to work with yourself when you know your body. But then, you know, you've spoken to 10 doctors who've all said, no, I don't think that's a really good idea. So when you start a charity, because you know that this is going to be beneficial, was that really difficult to do?
It was initially. Luckily, I think my consultant actually is a trustee of our charity, and she didn't really talk to me about exercise initially, and she changed her perspective massively. And now every patient she has, she talks to about exercise and what they do and encourages them to do it. So I think there was a big educational shift in terms of, you know, I think over the last 8 years there's been more information and more evidence and more research around cancer and exercise and its benefits. And I think the hardest thing is people also have negative experiences with exercise and sport. So if you're, for example, in a healthcare setting and you haven't had a great experience of sport throughout your life, you are not likely to talk about it either. So I think what our aim is with 5K Your Way as well is to help encourage healthcare professionals to come down and experience what our community is about within the incredible parkrun community, and change their perspective on that by seeing it. So not just me and Lucy, who obviously, you know, we've come from sporty backgrounds, like, you know, that's been a huge part of our life. So we know deep down how important it is, but often telling people isn't the way. So getting them to experience that, I think, is incredibly important. And I think Lucy will be able to give an example of one of the consultants who did really change that. But I think when I was thinking about this earlier today, when I was diagnosed, there wasn't anyone to turn to or talk about. I felt quite alone around cancer and exercise because there wasn't many groups, there wasn't people to turn to, there wasn't a community I could be part of. So I had that feeling of being quite lost. So it's amazing to see kind of like 8 years on what this community can provide to people. And actually what it also does is, it's not quite the norm yet, but it can create the norm around cancer and exercise. And the groups can be basically saying, you know, it's normal to come down and jog or run or walk or volunteer. It's not so foreign in the cancer setting anymore. And I think that's what we're trying to achieve with it as well.
Yeah. And so Lucy, you know, let's talk about the exercise side of it. So Gemma knew exercise was going to be beneficial for all those reasons. And how do you talk about exercise in terms of, do you get an opportunity as an oncologist? Are you only talking to people who obviously have got cancer, or is there an opportunity does exercise help you not get cancer? Is that something that can be used as a tool to kind of keep healthier and prevent it almost? Or are you're kind of fighting the fire as it's there, and so you recommend exercise from then?
No, so there's very good evidence that exercise does reduce the risk of some cancers, for example, breast cancer. I personally, I mean, there's no doubt exercise for every health condition. I can't think of a health condition that exercise is bad for. other than perhaps running on a broken leg or something obvious. But it's indisputable. Exercise is good, and maybe that's one positive that might come out of this pandemic, that people are perhaps exercising a bit more. For people with cancer, the traditional advice from doctors and from nurses was exactly as Gemma said, rest. And actually what we see in clinic is that people who are diagnosed with cancer, their loved ones want to wrap, so their partners or whoever it might be, want to wrap the person who's been told they have cancer in cotton wool. And they want to make their cups of tea, they want to do everything for them. They think it's, the natural assumption is that rest is the best thing to do. And I think as doctors, as nurses, as anyone working in cancer services, one of the simplest things and probably the most rewarding thing we can do in a consultation is just give people permission to be active. And when you like Gemma says, people want to try anything, and they will Google kind of things, diet, supplements, cannabis, and actually there's pretty good evidence for exercise. We know it makes people feel better, we know it makes people tired. We suspect it's probably, when the big studies come out, it is going to be shown to improve outcomes, to reduce side effects from treatment, to improve kind of how people cope with treatment, to improve response rates to treatment. There are really cool studies. So if you put mice on a treadmill, then their cancers respond better to treatment. So there is loads of good small studies coming out that exercise improves outcomes. So if you tell people not only can you exercise, but actually it's probably the biggest thing that you can do that might improve how you manage your treatment, that gives them a little bit of control, and it's something that they can do to make them feel better, and perhaps perhaps improve their outcomes. But we're really bad at bringing it up. Like Gemma said, I think it's if you don't exercise yourself, it's quite hard to talk. And I struggle to talk to people about exercise because I feel they look at me and go, well, obviously you're going to say it. Someone who never exercises themselves probably struggles, for the opposite reason. Knowing where to sign, I think having initiatives to signpost patients too is quite helpful. So that's where 5K Your Way, and there are lots of other charity initiatives, doing group sessions and etc. But yeah, when do we have that conversation? It's something I really struggle with, and I don't know. I think we should be having the conversation right at the start. But having said that, we know that patients take home maybe 20% of what's said in a consultation. So I think probably, and I've spoken to lots of people, patients, people who've been through cancer treatment, and I think probably it's actually little and often every time, and as much as anything, just giving people permission. But honestly, as a doctor, it is one of the most rewarding things when you say to someone who's thought that they just need to rest, and you give them permission to go out for their walk, and then they come back 3 weeks later and they feel so much more positive, more energetic. The two of them might have been doing fun. It's so rewarding. And so much of what we do is negative. It's another thing to add into a consultation.
To be able to see that. And I guess, like you were saying, Gemma, the empowerment is so important, isn't it? Because you've got all of this treatment that's happening to you, but it's something that you will know yourself whether you're capable of going for a walk or standing in the park to volunteer, or just being in a community where you don't actually have to do something, but you feel like you're just out with everybody else, and that's really important.
And I think what people kind of get a little bit of a negative association, like I said, with exercise, and it's more the word sometimes. Like, I think what you can also frame it to is like, actually it's just about sitting less and moving more, and whether that be just in the household, if that's your first step. Like, everyone's really individual, so like people have a different diagnosis, different health status, like different goals and different needs, and so it's really about where is what's right for you, and what do you find you enjoy doing. And like you say, things like volunteering at Park Run, you're not necessarily running it, but you're being active, you're being around people. And so there's so many different ways that the word exercise and activity can be placed. And I think just adding on to Lucy's point, what I think that we're trying to create, and what I've seen a lot more of recently, is the storytelling from people who've been there. And I think that that's so powerful. Like you said, you can have a doctor say all they want, but actually having somebody who's been through a similar experience to you, who's just started, say, a 5K away group, or just started part run or another exercise class, and you can hear their experience, and they tell it, you know, a true story of what they've experienced, what they've gone through, and how they've got to where they are now. It's so empowering. And I think that the more we share about our community and the people within it, the better. Because I think 8 years ago, I didn't know anybody who'd been it. Whereas now, that'd be, if I was diagnosed with cancer now, or was going through my treatment, I'd feel a lot more empowered that there were people out there who were going on a similar journey, and were also involving exercise and movement in their life. So definitely think that that's hopefully what the benefits of our community is too. Yeah.
So, and it can be quite motivational for, I mean, Gemma mentioned the Palam Patel, who's one of the professors of oncology at Nottingham, and he'd never ran at all. He won't mind me saying he was a little bit overweight. He's probably around about 60, give or take a couple of years, and he started running because he heard about 5K Your Way, and then he ended up doing a half marathon. He's done a triathlon, and he's quite good motivation for a lot of the fight. His patients ended up racing him because he didn't realise that he was there, and then he saw him, was like, I'm going to beat my oncologist. And actually, I would say that, another colleague, Ivo Henning, who I work with, since I've started, he started talking to people about movement, and he's realising how it can be one of the really simple things that can make a massive difference. Yeah.
So that's definitely helpful for prevention and recovery, and then dealing with the mental side of it, because it's not just the physical side, is it? Gemma, and you'll see that all the time, Lucy, because you're talking to patients all the time. It's not even, once they say, right, Gemma, you've got the green light, you can exercise as much as you like, you've still gone through such a massive thing. You still got to cope with everything that brings with it, and exercise is obviously something that really helps. Like you say, you can share stories at a park run with 5K Your Way. You're with a group of like-minded people, aren't you? So the importance of connecting over it is really important.
I think no, I was just going to say on that, I think what's more powerful about having it in your life is that it makes you feel that you're more than just a cancer patient. And I think that you can hold on to that title for a very, very long time. And I know that it definitely helped me not just be somebody who had cancer and was going through my treatment, and that it didn't necessarily define me. I had, it gave me to have other things to talk about and goals and things to focus on, even if they were just small goals, that meant that my life wasn't just all about cancer, which for me, that was, incredibly
really
important to have.
And I think we're just talking to Lizzie Paddock, who's just written. So Liz is one of our regional ambassadors, and we just did the Q&A with her, and the peer support, the friendships that we hope people will make through 5K Your Way groups can be really powerful. And I think that traditional cancers can be incredibly isolating. And the traditional cancer support group is sitting in a room with a cup of cold tea and a digestive biscuit, and whereas our groups, what we would like to achieve, and the Nottingham group it shows that we can do this, is get a group of friends. I mean, Lizzie described her friendship group, who are all ages, all backgrounds, nothing else matters. They've all been through cancer. They don't talk about cancer the whole time, but they know that they're there if they need each other, and that's that's so powerful.
So powerful. And in the same community, I'm guessing that your kind of groups will be. So we've been to Park Run at the end of the month at Harrogate on the Stray to do Park Run there, and there's been a 5K Your Way group, and recognise a lot of the people in there, which mean that you are actually connecting communities as well. It's not like you have to go all the way from Harrogate to Nottingham to join it, although you could do that if you wanted. Like the Park Run community, you could go and do 5K Your Way, any park run, But actually it's nice that people have got that community, because I think, like you say, the isolation, it comes back to that, doesn't it? You're the only person who might feel like that, or the only age group like that, and you might feel like that in your area, but actually being able to come together as a group and do it, and all wear the t-shirts and the sweatshirts, and that unison and the connection is really nice, to be able to see your own community and not just feel like you're out there on your own.
And normalizing living life with cancer or after cancer. And I think that's something that comes up quite a lot, that there is still this stereotype of cancer patients die. And we know that even for people whose cancer is spread, who don't have a curable cancer, they can often live many, many years now with treatments that we have. And so normalizing living an active life, a relatively normal life, I think that's really powerful as well.
Really important.
Yeah.
So let's look. Sorry, Gemma, just aware of time, but
yeah.
We've got lots of questions as well, which is good, and we could probably go on forever. I know I talk way too much, but we've just got a question here that says, like parkrun, your groups haven't been able to meet up during lockdown, but prior to that, where was it just before lockdown, and how does your relationship with parkrun work?
So I'll just start this. Long story.
Loads of questions.
So we had celebrated our 2-year birthday yesterday, which is amazing. So we have 56 groups across the UK and Ireland, for 67. But we have over 160 ambassadors as well. So they're our ambassadors who take ownership over the groups, and they may be people who are living with and beyond cancer. We have healthcare professionals. So they are your kind of meet and greet at the groups. And how it works with parkrun is we are essentially the 5K away community within the parkrun community. So we encourage people to come down and meet up with the ambassadors, and they can start and chat, and then they can go off and do that however they want to do, whether they run, they walk, they cheer, or they volunteer. And then often people go and meet up in the cafe afterwards. So it's a very relaxed, very unstructured way of bringing people together within an already existing community. And the reason we do it on the last Saturday every month was to provide that structure once a month, but then also to show that parkrun is absolutely incredible. Me and Lucy are obviously big fans, and we feel very privileged, and thank you guys a lot for actually allowing us to do this, and welcoming us in with massive open arms. But what it means as well is people can then use the parkrun community as their next step into integrating that activity into their lives. So then they might go on and do parkrun once, a couple of times a month, or every single week. And that's what we want to see. People do graduate from the groups and then go into that parkrun community as a whole as well. So that's where we were before lockdown, and we were looking to actually launch more groups. So we were mapping out. We have regional champions that are similar to parkrun that help us look at the different areas, because we want to make the groups accessible. We don't want you to have to drive an hour to go to your group. So our aim is really, especially in England, is to have a group attached to the 190 cancer centres. So big ambitions, with about a team of 3 or 2 and a bit. This is the thing, we're really not a big busy team. We are not a big team. So that was our ambitions, and we hope to do that once we can, and once we get up and running again. But we have been, we've adapted, and since lockdown happened, we've provided virtual classes every 2 weeks to start off with, and now every 1 week, which was delivered by cancer rehab instructors. Me to start off with. Now we're bringing our ambassadors in. We've done our question and answers each week. So we're hopefully, we've done different challenges. So some of our ambassadors have come up with Land's End to John O'Groats, round the world in 80 days, and everyone's typing their distances in the spreadsheet. And our community, it's not just me and Lucy sat here giving the ideas. Our community are fully getting involved in all the ambassadors. So I think we'll use this opportunity to actually say a huge thank you to all our ambassadors, because they share our vision and our passion, and we would not be where we are, and we would not be able to do what we do without them. They're absolutely incredible. So that's kind of where we're at the minute.
So, but let me just take you back to, if you're a patient, how do you get signposted to you? So I'm guessing that not all doctors will know about you yet, and if not, is that something that you're working on, so that you could be accessed to anybody. I mean, how does somebody find out about you?
So I think that is probably one of our biggest challenges, and what we're trying to do is link every group with a healthcare professional ambassador who would take on ownership for promoting it locally. I think something that another avenue of our work is trying to increase awareness amongst healthcare professionals. Firstly, about the benefits of physical activity for people living with and after cancer, but also obviously of 5K Your Way. And yeah, I've been lucky. I've been invited to do a few talks at kind of the UK Breast Cancer Conference and the British Lung Cancer Conference and things. And I'm always really pleasantly surprised about how it goes down. And we're increasingly getting kind of messages from healthcare professionals saying, well, why haven't we got a group here? And that's, that's challenging, because we don't have the capacity to just create groups, but it's also really positive as well.
Yeah.
But I think, social media is wonderful, but it is a little bit of an echo chamber, and something we've really struggled with is getting beyond, because my followers are generally sporty, they're becoming more cancery, but cancery, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're generally sporty. You guys at Park Run have been incredible, but again, you guys are preaching to people who come to Park Run. And something that makes me really sad is how charities don't work together. And we're really, the big charities, Race for Life, for example, we're not a competitor with them, but their audience is in part the people that we want to tell about us.
Of course, yeah.
But, your husband has been very helpful.
He's amazing.
It's just like, run a million miles, let's get a million routes. Your husband has been very good at saying, just, let it grow organically. And I think we were starting to see that. We were in a really, really good place before lockdown. I think we're going to have challenges, as is everyone, after lockdown. That's more because our population it is a transient population. People might not need our groups forever. They might not want to be our groups forever. But at the same time, we're coming out of it a lot better. And in a year's time, I think we'll be a lot better, probably because of lockdown, than we would have been without it.
Yeah, because you've been able to pause for a second to just sort some stuff out. Some doctors, Lucy, have raised concerns about people not getting in touch during lockdown, which leads to delays in diagnosis and treatment. Is that happening? And what would be your advice to people who are listening or watching now?
There's no doubt about that new cancer diagnoses, I can't remember the figures, I'll get them wrong, so I won't quote them, but have gone down significantly. And that's not because people aren't getting cancer, it's because they haven't yet been diagnosed with cancer. I think the message from everyone who works in any healthcare setting is that we're open as normal, and if you're concerned about something, seek medical advice, and don't be scared. Particularly now that things are. But as a doctor, my worry is how our hospital is going to cope with this influx that we're expecting, because that has been so much put on hold.
You're getting loads of comments. You can't see the comments. I don't know if people know that, but you can't actually see the comments, but you're getting lots of people say thank you for your hard work. I saw Eleanor Thompson from Woodhouse Moor Park Run who said thank you for keeping us all connected, you did a great job. Mark Duca there just saying thank you for your hard work. So you might have to go back and watch it and have a look at those comments. A last question before we go to the viewers' questions, which are great. And it's a cheeky one. Who'd be fastest over 5K when Park Run returns?
Gemma. That's an easy one. Gemma's running like a beast at the moment.
I'm not Park Run, right? Yeah. I'm not going to dispute that, but I probably should do. But I wouldn't win over triathlon or swimming or biking. I'd be miles behind. So we'll take our battles.
Right, thank you. Let's go to the viewer question. So Nikki Wilkinson, and you might know some of these people who've put questions in. Nikki Wilkinson, she says, my best friend has terminal cancer. He's a runner. So how can I help him stay motivated, as he inspires me so much?
I think that's really tricky. I don't like the word terminal, and that's got so many different connotations. So it's hard hard to know what situation he's in. I mean, lots of, we did lots of people with cancer, and I hope that he's well enough to carry on running. And if he can't run, to walk or to get outside or to do whatever his body lets him do. And certainly there's definitely no reason why, if he feels well enough to exercise, he shouldn't.
And I suppose when you've got your groups, everybody has days where they don't feel motivated, whether you're well or you're not well. But I think particularly when you've had a diagnosis such as this one, and your motivation is the only thing that, you've got the ability, but you lose that motivation. What's the best advice for somebody without motivation, do you think?
Sorry. No, I was just going to say that the hardest thing is probably going to be taking that first step, because we know that once you've taken that first step, you will feel less tired. You probably will get less, feel less anxiety, less low mood. There's really clear evidence that physical activity, particularly for those people who, for whom exercise has always been part of their life. But there's no easy way of taking that first step. I mean, Gemma, you're probably better placed to.
I mean, Gemma, do you think it's easier to just accept that you're going to be slower, so you can't expect to come back and just be able to run even the way you were before? So did you manage the expectations for yourself? When you said, I'm going to go for a run, did you think, well, you never know, I might just skip out and do 7-minute miles? Or did you know that you'd managed that and thought, it's going to be hard, it might be really painful, but I'm going to do it anyway?
Yeah, I think there's a reality of, I think for me personally, I did have a lot where I went out when I thought I was going to do 6-mile run, went out for a mile at 10-minute miling and stopped and walked home because I just couldn't do it. So I always listen to my body. I think when you don't feel right and you don't feel well, yes, you're not going to feel right during cancer treatment. But if you don't feel right, you really know that don't just crack on with it. Like, that's not the right thing to do. And I think it is really hard to accept that you're not where you used to be. Like, that's really not easy. But part of it is accepting it and being aware of that difference in feeling. But I think from the question around motivation, I think it's also okay not to be motivated. I think that's something that, as somebody supporting you, it's not necessarily that person needs motivation. They just need you to be there for them. They may take time to find that motivation. And I think it's like, sometimes it's just self-discovery. I went through periods of 6 weeks, 7, 8 weeks where I literally didn't do anything, and I didn't want to do anything. And I felt so ill, and life just felt like it was on top of me, and I didn't know whether I was going to make it, and all of that sort of stuff. And it was okay for somebody not to be dragging out my bed and doing something. And sometimes you just have to find your motivation yourself. And as a friend, I think that's just sometimes being there, even with a cup of tea, or making it so you go for a walk, and making it not about exercise and goals and all of that sort of stuff. Just making it really relaxed, really unstructured, and seeing where that leads you to, rather than trying to really plan for somebody. So I think I'd say that that is kind of probably the advice. I mean, everyone's very different, but I'd say that's probably the best way to approach it.
Yeah, so like giving yourself permission to just do what you need to do at the time.
Yeah, and I think because psychologically that comes into it. And my friend's a psychologist, and she always says to me, like, our life is like this. Like, 1 minute we feel like we can do everything, the next minute we just hate it and want to switch off from everything. But that's okay to be like that. And yes, sometimes people thrive off external motivation. I see a quote and I want to go for a fast run because that's what motivates me. But not everybody's like that, and that's okay. I think it's just, being okay with that, and then not pushing somebody, because pushing somebody can turn someone the opposite way as well. Just letting them have that self-discovery, taking their time, and just doing little bits to start off with.
Thank you. Forgive me if I get your name, if I pronounce your name wrong. Perho Johnson says, Gemma and Lucy, what are your present exercise routines? What does a normal week look like for you exercise-wise?
Do you want to go first, Luce?
Well, we're probably polar opposites, because I was a professional triathlete for quite a long time, and actually, lockdown's been, anyone who follows my triathlon career knows that retirement's been tough, and I didn't want to retire. And actually, lockdown's been good because it's made me retire. It's made me got off that training treadmill. So I now do a lot of activity. I've done a very long bike ride this morning, but it's exercise to make me feel happy, not really for a purpose at the moment. It's been quite a good transition, actually, in lots of ways.
What about you, Gemma?
Yeah, so for me, I'm obviously still trying to compete in running, but running's so much more than just competing for me. Like, it's my therapy, it's my passion. I absolutely love everything about it. I love the people you meet. I love the challenge in myself, like mentally and physically. So yeah, it's still a very, very big part of my life, and it will be until I'm 80, 90. I'll still be competing when I'm 90 years old. I'm never going to retire. But yeah, lockdown's been pretty good, actually. I've used it to, I pushed on with my training. I've been building up gradually, and I run pretty much 7 days a week with the rest day every couple of weeks. So yeah, about 55, 60 miles a week at the moment. But that's, I probably can still build on that. I have actually just had a little niggle, so I've had 2 weeks completely off, which I'm okay about because races are going to come around the corner too quickly. So it's about being patient. So I'm just currently building back up, and actually going for my first open water swim on Monday, so that should be interesting. I found my swimming arm pre-lockdown, and I was like getting back into swimming and thinking, I feel really good doing this, and then lockdown happened and I've lost them now. So I'm not around, but yeah, that's where I'm at.
Raj Sheena says, I've been trying to run every day, but knee aches so much after each run. Any thoughts on what I can do to substitute runs and get the same effect? It's the endorphins. Are you after the endorphins, Raj?
Cycling, honestly, cycling or cross trainer, I'm a cross trainer, but in this glorious weather, get outside on a bike. I've had so many injuries as a runner, and I've always actually raced really well on the back of, biking translates really well into running. So 100% get out on the bike. Just don't worry, let it sort itself out. Like Gemma's just done, 2 weeks of something different. You won't lose anything. You'll probably come back stronger.
Yeah.
I might add to that as well, just from a running coaching background, because I'm also in my other life, I'm also a running coach for my husband's business. But basically, with a knee issue, there might also be some strength issues going on. So I won't go into too much detail, but I think the glute, your bum area, probably needs to be a little bit stronger because things might be collapsing in. So look at that strength program as well, because I think it's not just about aerobic work, it's getting the body ready to run and building your foundations. And now is the perfect time to get the body strong, work on the leg muscles, and just really work on that technique as well.
So get a bike, Raj, and do some squats. Lee Butcher says, how long after major surgery would you start to run any distance? My dad is 66 and just had his op.
I think, questions like this are so hard to answer.
They're so personal,
without knowing the medical details. And so I think it's probably safest for me not to comment. What I would say, though, is the NHS advice is generally very, very overcautious. So I would question the standard advice with his surgeon. But I'm not going to pass comment on that without knowing the details, I'm afraid.
I would actually as well look at getting advice from a cancer rehab instructor who would then work with your medical team to be able to build you back to the right level of exercise. So you're more than welcome to get in touch with us and we can direct you to the right people. But I'd absolutely get that advice because they will be able to build up your exercise based on your diagnosis, your health status and what your goals are. So that I'd take that step actually as the next step as well.
Yeah. Great advice. And Eleanor Jones says, hi both, so inspiring. Any memorable people or real standout moments for you during your 5K Your Way meetups?
Well, I know mine straight away. It's this incredible lady called Sue who is 72 and she just came up to me one day about a year ago and at the 5K Your Way, and I don't remember seeing her before. She said, you're my hero, and I said, why? And she just started this story, and she was 70, she'd just been diagnosed with bowel cancer, it had spread to her liver, she was in hospital, these are literally, I've watched her videos so many times, I know it word for word. She couldn't even get out of bed to go to the toilet. She saw the flyer, for 5K away, she said, when I get out here, I'm going to do this, joking to her son. And then she came down, and she now she runs 5K. So she was 70, she'd never run in her life.
Wow.
She runs 5Ks. She's still on treatment. She's, even through lockdown, she's been going out running her 5Ks on her treatment. The most inspiring bit is what she said when she went under 40 minutes on treatment, age 72, having never run, she'd get naked in a river, and she did. So, if you're watching, you're a legend.
Oh, fantastic. I love that. What about you, Gemma?
So Sue's obviously one of my big inspirations and big moments, but I think one that really touched my heart was we had a Move charity ball a few years ago, and I kind of knew Jane already, and Jane unfortunately isn't here with us anymore, but Jane started our Leicester group when she was going through her treatment with her husband, and I went along and helped them start it and just gave her the support that she needed, and she created such an incredible close-knit community as part of that group, with 30 to 40 people coming down on the last Saturday of every month. And unfortunately Jane passed away while in the process of building that community, but the legacy that she's left is unbelievable, and that group is still going so strong. We've named it Jane's Run, and just what she's left behind and what she created was just amazing, and kind of gives you goosebumps when you think about that, to know that somebody had the impact that they wanted to have, because exercise is so important to them, and how they've helped so many other people through being that ambassador for that group and starting it and leading it is just an amazing memory to look back, even though it's a sad one, but amazing to have been part of her journey as well.
Yeah, amazing. Paul Green, last question for you ladies, says, what are your personal favourite park run moments, and have you done a not park run yet?
Ooh.
Favourite park run moments. Oh gosh,
it's hard, isn't it? Because if you do it, have you got one?
You go.
I did the San Francisco park run, so that's my absolute favourite, because I managed to. We went on holiday to Vegas, Yosemite, and San Fran, and then we did the San Francisco with the Golden Gate Bridge in the background. I did it with my family, and I managed to get the course record, I think. But I think Rebecca Robinson's now broken it. But that was my absolute beauty. If anyone gets a chance to do it, it's an amazing park run. Yeah,
we went for the inaugural, actually.
Oh, did you? Yeah. It's flat as a pancake.
I know. It's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah. So that would be mine.
What about you, Lucy?
I actually think it's probably walking around. So with the 5K Your Way, I tend to run it and then go and walk. We get quite a lot of walkers in Nottingham, and I remember once I just saw this what I'd always dreamed of, a little peloton of walkers, and that was really special, because I think that's what we aspire to achieve in many ways, well, Gemma said it, we're just so grateful to Park Run, but particularly to all the volunteers, because our people who walk take a lot longer, and that means that they're waiting sometimes in the cold for longer, and we've always felt so welcomed. And
because I think as a volunteer, you do it because you love it, and actually having walkers, they're so important because you're normalising movement, and it's so important that you can just go out and you can call a walk exercise. And I think that's the thing, isn't it, that we forget that walking is just as important as being able to run, because if you can't run, then walking is amazing as a form of exercise, and as a that first step into running if you want to do it. So it's great. Everybody always loves having the walking community there, because people are out, and I think people like to see that everybody is loving what you're loving, whether they're running it or whether they're walking it. It's awesome.
We have Litza, who's she's a 5K Your Way regular. She quite often comes down. She's complete bonkers loon, but she comes down with pom-poms and she cheers, and she must burn off so much more energy than anyone who runs the 5K jumping up and down, and the walkers always get the biggest cheers.
I'd recommend as well, if anybody is a runner, because I walk a lot of the 5K ways, I never really run them, to actually go and walk it and be with the back and tail, because it's probably a better experience actually than putting yourself through the running, but it's lovely to be at the back and just taking everything in rather than always running it. So I'd recommend, if people haven't done it walking, that they should definitely do it.
Yeah, you get good stories. That's a great place to end it on. Thank you so much for your time this evening, Lucy and Gemma, and thanks to everyone who tuned in. You can catch up with Lucy on Twitter via @LucyGoss and with Gemma via @GemHilly, and you can find out more about 5K Your Way via 5kyourway.org. Like I said earlier, do check out the many parkrun social media channels in the UK and across the world, as well as subscribing to the various podcasts out there. Now, more than ever, it's important that we all come together and support each other. The Parkrun family is there for us all, and we will get through this together. Thank you both. It's been really lovely to chat. Take care.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, Helen.
Bye.